You're back on To The Point. Exactly 24 hours ago, a low-intensity blast happened on Church Street in Bangalore, a crowded part of the city. One person died, one person was injured. This was a low-intensity attack, but the implications of it could be dire. Investigations are currently on. Material evidence has been collected from the site. But 2 days before New Year, at a time when there is already a general alert, not much that's very specific, India itself, in the aftermath of what has happened in Bangalore, is on high alert. Joining me this evening to discuss what they see as the threat perception and what India perhaps needs to learn from what happened in Bangalore yesterday and what may lay ahead. Joining us live, Vikram Singh, former Director General of Police of Uttar Pradesh, joining us live this evening from Lucknow. Gopal Hosur, former IPS officer from Bengaluru, who's been part of investigations of several attacks in the city itself, and he'll have valuable things to say. Jaydev Ranade, former Additional Secretary of the Research and Analysis Wing, and Ajay Shukla, Defence Analyst and Strategic Affairs Analyst, Senior Journalist from Delhi. Mr. Hosur, if I could come to you first, and I want to remind both our panelists and our viewers, this isn't a debate. What we would like to do is give our viewers as much information and as much analysis as we possibly can about what happened in Bangalore and the context in which we need to look at the events that have happened and what may actually follow. Mr. Hosur, what happened in Bangalore yesterday has disturbed people across the country, especially since, across television screens, you can see, flashing lines saying India on high alert, terror threat in other cities. This could be just a practice run for something much bigger. You've seen what's happened in Bangalore, Mr. Hosur. You've investigated, earlier attacks as well. What is your expert reading of what happened in Bangalore and what agencies will be looking at right now?
To begin with, this was an incident that took place at 8:30 p.m. in the central part of Bangalore.
Yes.
Normally heavily crowded around the evening hours, especially so around the time of the New Year. As you rightly said, it was a low intensity blast, and probably the impact of that was that it injured a few people and killed one lady.
Yes.
Looking at the blast site, I personally feel that this has been planted there quite some time back with a timer device, and the ingredients used have been quite traditional. I believe the ammonium nitrate, the nails were used as the sharpeners, and a timer device.
Yes.
Probably this was intended to create a certain amount of scare in the people visiting that area, and since it happens to be in the heart of Bangalore, and Bangalore being a very progressive city, probably this was intended to convey a message that we are still around and we are still active.
Vikram Singh, one of the things that naturally happens in the aftermath of any attack is, the sudden amount of speculation. Who is responsible? What was the purpose of the, of the attack? What was the modus operandi? Were there earlier events that indicated or provided clues that may have been missed, leading to this particular attack? What are you making, of the several things being said? Because even today, the Bangalore Police Commissioner even said something, about groups like Simi. They haven't ruled out the angle of what happened, with the ISIS Twitter handle a few days ago, and so certain threats that have been coming in from social media as well. What do you make of all that, Mr. Singh?
Shiv, you have a very pertinent point that in fact the pedigree, the DNA and the footprints of the blast. It is an IED, improvised explosive device, ammonium nitrate and shrapnels, as one of the learned speakers had mentioned. We must understand that it could be a dry run, a precursor of a larger attack. We had a very serious attack in Bangalore in 2008, a serial blast which had very many casualties. I don't know how many were arrested and how many are still at large, and whether if they are in jail, it would be worthwhile to question them. Yes, ISI possibility of Mehdi is a possibility and a probability. But at the same time, Al-Umma and Simi, and the Simi, the 5, in fact the 6 who escaped from the Khandwa jail on the 3rd of October 2013, 5 are still at large.
Yes.
Only Aziz Abid has been arrested. But the other 5 who were probably last seen in Bijnor, UP, are still at large and are not known about their whereabouts. It would be worthwhile to identify where they are. And apart from the fact, I would still strongly advise the Bangalore police not to disclose what their SOPs are. In fact, that would be letting the cat out of the bag, and the terrorists and those who planted the bomb would be very eagerly watching as to what is the SOPs of the Bangalore police. It is never prudent to disclose your cards.
All right, yeah, because the Bangalore police has been, quite open. They've been, talking quite a bit, providing information about, the leads they're actually looking at this point of time. Is that a good or bad thing? Jaydev Ranade, I want to bring you in as well because, the context, whether we like it or not, will always be, connected to what's happening, inside Pakistan, the groups that are, that still have sustenance from across the border, what should the Bangalore police and the internal security apparatus be looking at this time, the context of the attack yesterday?
There are 2 points that come to mind on this. The first, as has already been brought out by the previous panelists, that it could be a dry run, because it was in a way a very simplistic kind of effort where a packet was left on a pavement.
Yes.
And then it was detonated. At the same time, I think it opens up the possibilities of it being a dry run, but more importantly, that it highlights the degree of radicalization that seems to be taking place, particularly in Bangalore, which has come to notice even earlier. And I think that is where the Bangalore police and the central agencies have to introduce technology into countering and preventing such attempts. They have to start tracking the internet, people who are vulnerable to radicalization, and then move towards and then start counter-radicalization attempts. They must track the various elements who are in collusion or who are collaborating with these other outfits based abroad.
Yes.
And I think start picking them up. There has to be, after all, this has happened at a time when we have the 26th of January coming up, President Obama coming here.
Right.
It's a sensitive period when these things can happen all over.
It's a reminder that these things can still happen. Ajay Shukla, one of the other thing that we've come to expect every time there is a terror attack, small or big, and even an incident of any kind, of this kind, is that there is a bit of a blame game. You've got the center saying there were intelligence alerts. The state says the intelligence alerts were not specific enough. There was a general alert and nothing of that kind. Each time something like this happens, you do see a little bit of friction between the state and center. We still haven't reached that point where a terror attack, in a state is seen as a terror attack in the country.
You're absolutely correct, and I agree with you there. It always devolves into a blame game, but that is, I think the reason for that is our completely incoherent response to terror.
Yeah.
I think that anybody who steps back and takes a look at this particular attack, the one thing that stands out for me in this attack is its complete amateurishness. It is really difficult to plant a bomb in the heart of Bangalore at busy peak time and only kill one person and injure one person.
Yes.
I'm sounding heartless, but it actually is the case. It is a completely amateurish attack. And for me, that sort of more or less conclusively proves that this is not one of the conventional groups. This is not Simmi, not the Indian Mujahideen, where there is a high degree of expertise in explosive devices and IEDs. It is more likely to be, and also a lot of those leaders are now in jail or have gone off to Pakistan.
Yeah.
So they are not in circulation. They are simply not in circulation. The one thing that points to sort of a solution in this is that this is somebody who's on the learning curve, at a very early stage of the learning curve. And I agree with Jaydev Ranade. This is an indication that there are new groups coming into the fray. I would point out that many of the old groups,
scary,
the ones that developed huge expertise in IEDs, started with low intensity devices like this. And then they learned and got better and better as they went along. So when you have an attack like this, because of the fact that it's a new entry, you will not have a lot of radio chatter, you will not have communication, you will not have indication. But the one thing that you will have is an indication that more and more young people are coming into the fray.
And that's a terrifying notion, Mr. Hosur. You know, you've investigated attacks, you know, the IISc attack, the serial blast that happened in Bengaluru as well. You know, this is a terrifying prospect that, you know, it may not be any of the conventional groups, but it could be new groups, you know, filling the space vacated, you know, by leaders of the old groups packed away in jails or still across the border, their assets frozen, not being able to mount many attacks. That means that radicalization hasn't been contained at all, and it's a real it's possibly even a bigger threat in that case if there are new groups coming in, Mr. Hosur.
I tend to agree with what Ajay was saying about the radicalization and this being a very amateurish attempt.
Yes.
For that matter, the 3 bomb blasts that have taken place in Bangalore, the one at the Chinnaswamy Stadium, a serial blast in 2008, and the present one. All these to me appear to be very amateurish because the way in which the IED was prepared and the impact that it made was quite feeble.
Yes.
Except in the serial blast where one lady was killed, and in this blast one more lady was killed. It was basically small injuries to most people.
Right.
And it is most contrary to what I have observed has happened in Ahmedabad, Jaipur, or the Hyderabad, Varanasi, Mumbai, all those centers. It looks like a typically amateurish, and the expertise in making the IEDs seems to be lacking.
Yeah.
We must also take note of the fact that this radicalization, probably because of the availability of cyber area, a lot of people are getting radicalized. I don't even rule out the possibility of a lone wolf who has been radicalized through the cyber network.
Well, I don't know which is actually a more disturbing prospect. Vikram Singh, I want to bring you in on that. You know, an important point raised by Ajay, and I want to dwell on that for just a moment. New groups, you know, very little footprint, no radio chatter, not much, not much of a sort of presence really out there. So there is a chance that the Bangalore police may not even know what they're actually looking for.
This possibility and hypothesis will have to be worked out very seriously. And in the second place, we must not rule out that in earlier cases also, there were such so-called amateurish attacks, and then they were followed by the larger full-scale attacks. You must realize that this bomb itself, the end product, was in itself a complete and as sophisticated as any IED explosions that the country has seen.
Right.
There have been any number of cases which were initially preceded by such precursors which were followed by full-scale attacks. There is no denying the fact that there are sleeper cells, there are fence-sitters, and there are lone wolves, and there is also possibility of new radicalized youths entering the fray. But at the same time, I strongly rule out the possibility of a first-timer planting a bomb in Church Street in such a crowded area at this point of time. The probability would now be perhaps to be a precursor of a larger attack.
Okay, so you're sticking with your point that this appears to be from one of the conventional groups and could be a dry run for a larger attack. But Mr. Hosur, I want to bring you back in, on the point that Jaydev Ranade made, and I want to go back to him in just a moment, but I just want to get you in on the radicalization part. Coastal Karnataka, the Bhatkal belt, Mangalore, a great deal of, we hear about communal problems, communal issues, communal flare-ups, the possibility of recruitments happening from there, by terror groups, in a fairly regular way over the years. Is there a concrete plan that the Bangalore police has or had to actually contain it? Because it doesn't appear that, that's the case, sir. Mr. Hosur.
I think you're right to some extent that coastal Karnataka people have been radicalized more, especially the Bhatkal brothers. But the blast that took place in Bangalore on earlier occasions,
yes,
the IM only had a peripheral role. It was basically the focus area came from Kerala, and most of the members of that earlier module were arrested, and they are all in jail undergoing the trial. As regards the coastal belt is concerned, it is a highly sensitive place. there is a lack of communal harmony in that region, and there is a lot of spillover effect from the neighboring state of Kerala into the coastal Karnataka. The Riyadh brothers, initially members of the Simi, but when they went to Mumbai, they found, after the Simi was banned, it was they who founded the Indian Mujahideen, and they took a very active part. But most of the time, they spent it outside Karnataka and planned the serial blasts, especially in Ahmedabad, Surat. The blast didn't go up there, but in most of the other places. But they used to have Maharashtra as their, I would say, the center place from where they could be carrying out those activities.
Right.
This radicalization in coastal Karnataka, I am sure, is a very serious matter, and the Karnataka government has taken up several measures to ensure that this problem is addressed. And I am sure in the days to come, probably the work of the Karnataka police, the work of the Karnataka government will be focused in this direction.
Jaydev Ranade, the possibility that a dormant, Simi, we haven't seen Simi's direct, or at least sort of seen any direct involvement in any of the recent attacks. What is your assessment, of Simi's capacities, its capabilities to mount attacks both big and small at this time, Mr. Ranade?
I think we must acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of sleeper cells that are still existing, and they could be activated at any point of time. But I do tend to lean towards the majority view here, that this doesn't seem to be an organized effort which has been carried out. But may I suggest that what we need to do really is take a step back and take a more holistic view of what is happening.
Right.
There are certain places in Karnataka, Kerala, etc., which are known to be hotbeds of either underworld activity or extremist activity, who have links with Pakistan or places in the Gulf.
Right.
They should be brought under a centralized scanner. The second, as I mentioned, technology needs to be brought in to try and detect people who are looking at all the websites, etc., that are put up by terrorist groups. And because that is a way where you can radicalize people, where you can teach them how to use explosives, etc. And try and counter-radicalize them. And the third is certainly become more tough in trying to see that preventive measures like CCTV cameras with facial recognition are brought in, which means more widespread use of photo identity cards, etc. These are the steps that I think the center will have to start now initiating.
Ajay, do you what is your view on what will happen right now? Every attack that happens, every incident of of terror that takes place in the country, Ajay, there's a period of introspection. There's some outrage. There are some prescriptions that are put out about what the governments need to do at the state and the center. You said that there was a very confused sort of response. What would you say are the 2 or 3 main things that the government, both at the state and center, perhaps need to do, starting with the response to what's happened in Bangalore yesterday?
First of all, Shiv, I would look at this entire thing holistically. With due respect to my fellow panelists, all of whom I recognize very, very qualified officers, I don't subscribe to the viewpoint that this was a precursor to a major attack. Major attacks don't have precursors. Where you could, in the lead up to a major attack, you could go through and rehearse all the preliminary steps, the planting of the device, the sort of timer mechanisms and so on, but you don't actually explode a device as a precursor to a major device, because all that does is put everybody on high warning alert and reduces the chances of success of the major device. So I would still say that the chances of a major attack are rather on the low side. I think this was a beginner group. I wouldn't even call it a lone wolf, I would call it a wannabe wolf. Because the internet has now brought radicalization to homes, to laptops. Policing has to completely and radically change. We've seen in the case of the Boston Marathon bomber where there was a complete lone wolf, Zokhar Sarnaev. We've seen in the Times Square bombing, completely self-radicalized individuals who are doing it. And I think that what is the way to actually address all of this is to realize that it doesn't take a Riaz Bhatkal to radicalize people any longer. People are getting radicalized sitting in their home.
Absolutely, important point.
The whole of the world is now a sort of a playfield. Incidents that are taking place in Chechnya are radicalizing people. Palestine is radicalizing people just as much as what happened in, say, Gujarat in 2002 or the Babri Masjid bombings. So what we need is very good community policing. The problem today is that the leadership within the Muslim community has dissolved almost, you know, with the fading out of the Congress providing leadership to the Muslims. There are no real leaders, so it really is going to have to take a community initiative to sort of bring some of these misguided youths onto. The vast majority of the community is very far from radicalized. They're all calm, peace-loving people, but they have to find ways within the community of getting these, you know, these misguided youths on track.
Vikram Singh, you know, if we could just set aside the part about, you know, who may have been responsible, whether it was one of the conventional groups, you know, or an amateur group or a wannabe wolf, as Ajay put it, I want to pick up an important part of what Ajay said. You know, radicalization is no longer, it no longer needs, you know, a Riaz Bhatkal or a Hafiz Mohammed Saeed. People are getting radicalized sitting in their homes. Radicalization happens through laptops, through mobile phones. We had that young man, you know, in Bangalore who's currently being investigated, you know, for running a Twitter handle, totally sympathetic, you know, to the ISIS. He'd never even met anyone from the ISIS, but he was still, you know, still completely bought into their entire sort of philosophy. So is the police, and I'm not just talking about Bangalore, obviously, I'm talking about across the country, are police forces in this country ready for that kind of role, the ability to actually look at literally everything, the technology that it would involve, the fact that it might mean, you know, forgetting everything the police already knows about policing? It's a completely new paradigm of threat this time, Mr. Singh.
Shiv, you are referring to Mehdi of Bangalore, who was arrested for the links with ISIS. Now, radicalization is the gift of the virtual world to the youngsters of India and the world. And the virtual world is one chat room where anybody can approach anyone.
Yes, exactly.
The University of Singapore has done landmark work in de-radicalization process, and few of our universities are working on de-radicalization. The same process that radicalizes the youth can also de-radicalize the youth.
Right.
And in fact, it has been a tried and tested method that if the credibility of the police and the administration is high, youth of that area will not be radicalized. But when there is a system of cutoff, when there is no interface with the administration and the police and the community, the next thing that will happen is chaos and radicalization. The first thing that the police has to do is to have an interface, a dialogue, and in fact a healthy system of grievance redressal, and then ensure that they have a voice, they have somebody to lean on, and they have some cushion in which if there is any wrong or atrocity, it will be addressed soon. And if that does not happen, radicalization will also happen.
Well, as always, the solutions in the immediate aftermath of a terror attack of any kind, big or small, seem impossibly big to actually achieve. The truth is, as all of our panelists this evening have said, it has to be a holistic effort. It has to take into account virtually every level of planning, of being prepared, and then responding to attacks of this kind. I'm afraid we're completely out of time. It's been 24 hours only since the Bangalore attack. A lot of what's being said out there is in the realm of speculation, but here on Headlines Today, we'd like to give you what experts believe could be the early lessons to learn from what happened in Bangalore, who could be responsible, and what possibly lies ahead, both from Bangalore and the rest of the country. Ajay Shukla, Mr. Hosur, Jaydev Ranade, and Vikram Singh, thank you very much. Privileged to have you gentlemen this evening on To The Point.